Is Wednesdays with Webby Andrew Webster, the chief sports writer at the Sydney Morning Herald. In on a Wednesday morning, your colleague Adrian Prezenko has the story on the back page of the SMH this morning, Webby, about the NRL rejecting Queensland's bid to host three grand finals. So this is the run-up towards the 2032 Olympics. It was put on the table last year. It's quite interesting. So the proposal is 2023 Sydney, 2024 Brisbane, 2025 Sydney. Then we start to go out to tender, and this is the run-up to 2032, which, when you look at it in an Olympic perspective, makes a bit of sense. But the NRL, I reckon here, you tell me, has been smart by saying no because of the change of government in New South Wales. If they had said yes to all this, they'd have no leverage with their grand finals against the new government in New South Wales. Is that too much of a political landscape on it?
A little bit, but see, I think they're playing poker with a bad hand, the NRL. Trying to, like all these strategically placed stories, we're going to take the grand final to Melbourne, we're going to take it, put it out to tender, we're going to go here, there and everywhere, when it's because first they didn't get the $800 million upgrade of ANZ, and then Peter V'landys wanted that $800 million ploughed into suburban grounds, and then that got pulled by the Perrottet government. I don't think there's an appetite from the Chris Minns government to be putting money into suburban grounds.
There's not.
Anyway, but, and this is the thing, but I actually don't mind this proposal that's on the back page of the Sydney Morning Herald today. Because I'm a traditionalist in a lot of, when it comes to sport, in many ways, particularly if it works. But I'm not opposed to Brisbane getting grand finals here or there.
Yeah.
To be perfectly honest, I know it's a. I think they deserve it. I think Queensland deserves it. I think it's as much rugby league heartland as this state, and that's just fact, And it's a growing market. Brisbane, so
and it's worked,
and a long-term market as well.
So they've already had the dummy run, not the dummy run. I shouldn't say that.
With COVID,
they had the COVID run, and it's worked.
Yeah, but this whole idea of taking it to Melbourne and stuff like that, I don't necessarily agree with. There's also a deeper issue here too about stadium funding in New South Wales. Like, they got it. They got them. They got two brand new ones.
Yeah,
one at Combank Stadium and Allianz. And if you look at the crowds on a Thursday night for the two Thursday night games, Parramatta games there, start of the season and the other week, where they can barely fill half of it. And they I think in the first round, and I was there covering that game, they announced a crowd of 17,000. They must have been counting
doubles.
It was like fair income. There would have been 8 there. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, if you're going to ask for new stadiums, then at least get behind your clubs to make sure that you fill them. Like, I mean, you've got to hide to be asking for more stadium funding, more taxpayer money to build new stadiums in suburban grounds for rugby league clubs that some of which cannot even run themselves properly, despite getting $15 million grants a year. And then you want the taxpayer to fund new suburban stadiums when you won't get behind it and support it because you put games on like the one on... Look at Thursday night. Look at Sunday night. Bulldogs, Cowboys at an 80,000-seat stadium on a Sunday night. I mean, fair income.
Yeah.
At some point, take control back from the broadcasters and get behind clubs and the game and make sure you get people in there. Reduce the prices, whatever it's got to be, and market the hell out of the game. They used to do it for Monday Night Football years and years ago. I was talking to Brad Fittler about it this week. They used to get 40,000 there on a Monday night sometimes in those early days of Monday Night Football. In the NFL, I'm not trying to say the NFL that they should play this type of money, but by comparison, the NFL gives home clubs on the Thursday night $2 million per game on a Thursday night for the home team to market the hell out of that match, so they ensure that it's full. Now, that's the NFL where you don't usually see a spare seat in the house that often. So I think rugby league has a little bit of a hide to be asking for more taxpayer money to build new stadiums and keep flagging this idea of taking the grand final, the jewel in the crown, somewhere else, when they can't fill their own stadium.
I agree with you on the prospect of this, of the proposal that was put before them last year. I'm with you on that. I'm a traditionalist as well. I think we're both in the same camp here, and I don't mind it. And I think that taking it to Brisbane every second year or whatever it is fine. I don't agree with going to Adelaide because the Adelaide Oval might stump up $20 million. I just don't think that works. But I do agree with the fact that there's an avenue there to go, Sydney, Brisbane, if that's what you want to do. The 2032 Olympic run-up makes total sense, makes complete sense. But the poker with a bad hand thing, if they had have agreed, if the NRL had have agreed to this last year, right? If that proposal and they said, and let's lock up our grand finals in between now and 2031, what does, whether we agree or not with they should stick their hand out to governments, what does PVL have leverage-wise if he locks those up last year? What does he go back to the new government in New South Wales and say, well, if you don't give us the money for stadiums because we think we should have it, then we'll take our grand final where...
I don't know. That's him. I'm not going to tell Peter V'landys. That's on him. I think, don't snub your heartland. Don't put a price on having a grand final in either Sydney or Sydney or Brisbane, but don't give us this gibber about taking it to Melbourne and playing it there. Like that would be an embarrassment for the game. And when I say they're playing poker with a bad hand, like they're saying, well, we want the 800 million or whatever. I think it's for suburban grounds, and we're going to take it to Melbourne. All right, we'll put it out to tender and see how much you're going to make $800 million. With taking the grand final to tender. What are they going to give? What are they going to give you? What state government's going to give you $50 million a grand final, please?
Yeah, no, look, and that's spot on. I think the poker with the bad hand, Sydney Brisbane is not a bad hand. The poker with a bad hand by putting Melbourne into the mix and just throwing it out there is a bad hand, and I'll tell you why, mate. I'll tell you one reason why too. When we floated this, when it was floated last week, and we put it out there, my listeners came back at 1,000,000 miles an hour. We got no interest in the grand final or rugby league at the MCG. Can't stand it, don't want it, don't want to watch it, all that kind of stuff. And I was saying, well, hang on a second, the MCG is a bloody good ground. I mean, it's an incredible stadium. Not for rugby league.
No.
Not for rugby league.
No. I mean, I think you've got to you've got to abide by the traditions of the game in some ways. And I think, and Sydney, by virtue of the fact it has 9 teams, and Brisbane, by virtue of the fact that Queensland now have 5 teams. Is that right? 4 teams. Possibly in 18 a 5th team. You can't sort of snub your nose at that.
We had a good, robust discussion yesterday off the back of Bruce Hatch's comments about, well, there's too many teams in Sydney and we could do with another team in Brisbane. So we know the obvious agenda behind all that, but it did lead to a fascinating discussion around 9 Sydney teams.
The game has gone it didn't make the hard decisions that the AFL did years ago. And I just think, well, all right, then who?
That was the one.
Who?
We didn't get to an answer.
Well, it used to be Cronulla. You can't get rid of Cronulla now. Cronulla are just absolute.
Could you get rid of the Dragons? Could you relocate the Dragons?
Do you want to fight now, or do you want here, or in the studio, or outside? How dare
bring
you?
it on! Bring it on! Exactly,
how
and
dare
this is exactly what we did yesterday. We threw up all of the teams and said,
well,
okay,
all right. Well, look at the Tigers, right? I think they've got the lowest membership figures in the game at the moment. They've been a rabble for the last 10 years. But do you think rugby league can afford to get rid of the West Tigers?
No.
Can it get rid of that corridor, that southwest corridor that they talk about? Of course they can't.
No.
So the game's progressed too far down the track with what it's got to, I reckon, to force teams into mergers. Look, because that's really worked so well, hasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
In the last 10 years.
Yeah, history.
It does when you're winning comps, not so much when you're not winning anything. But or relocation, it's just not possible.